Hello my dear Dales and 9 Monkeys, good morning or evening and welcome back to another video. I am so happy to have you all here. So, in the wake of my recently silly videos, I have decided it would now be fun to ruin the good mood of this channel by talking about politics. Yay! Specifically, I will talk about this soy-drunken twink right here, Paul Joseph Watson, who is described on his own Wikipedia page as a British YouTuber, radio host, and conspiracy theorist. So you know that he is a legit free-minded free speech connoisseur, or something like that. Also, if that's not enough, down in the views section, we can see what a real fact, truther, and also consistent person he really is, expressing criticism towards the mistreatment of gay people in Islamic countries, or in this case, where he apparently very staunchly wants justice for a murdered Jewish man in Paris. On another note, Paul has also been recorded saying that he would, quote, press the button to wipe Jews off the face of the earth, or that he only, quote, cares about white people and not... I'm just gonna let you read that in your head. Okay, so in light of this, I feel comfortable saying that today I will talk about the Nazi Paul Joseph Watson. Though he is also still a soy-drunken twink at the age of... Whoa, 42?! Congrats, Paul, you really stayed young. I guess taking nothing but soy pills all day really helps you look like an eternal 15-year-old. Okay, but to get on a serious note now, Paul has been exposed as being a fascist with wrong ideas all over the internet by now. So, what is my excuse to beat this metaphorical dead Hitler? Well, recently there was a big election in Germany, and what do you know, that caused some reactions around the world. Specifically, the far-right party, the AfD, or how I like to call them, the AfD, became the second largest party with about 20% of the vote. Now, the reason why this is such a big deal is because the AfD doubled the amount of votes they got since the last election. Also, it's the first time ever for a far-right party to get this many votes since, well, the last time far-right people got a lot of votes in Germany. And of course, this triggered responses all around the world, and apparently the news also got to the cave that is inhabited by Paul Joseph Watson. So, after using all his remaining brain cells, Paul, or how a German grandma would call him, Paulchen, farted out this video right here. The truth about the German election. Or whatever his accent is. I won't try to do his accent, I'm just going to make fun of him. And me being a devout person born right here in Deutschland, I couldn't resist taking a gander at this here video. So let's watch it together and see what kind of stupid, smart, rational arguments are made by our dearest Paulchen. Though, before we start completely, I want to put this right here. That's a timer. Specifically, one that we will use to see how long it takes for Pauli Lion to tell his first lie in his video.
Well, what do you want, the good news or the bad news? Tell you what, let's start with the good news. The AfD doubled its vote share, securing nearly 21% and won 151 seats in Parliament. A party that didn't even exist at the start of the migrant crisis is now official.
Wow, that was just 13 seconds. This might be a record, because the AfD was actually formed in 2013, 2 years before the so-called migrant crisis. If we keep it going at this pace, I might have to give Paul a trophy for lies a minute. But anyway, let us keep watching. Maybe Paul will refine what he wanted to say a bit more.
Is now officially the second largest political entity in the country.
Wir haben ein historisches Ergebnis eingefahren. Wir waren noch nie stärker im Bund. Wir sind zweitstärkste Kraft geworden als Alternative für Deutschland und wir haben uns als Volkspartei...
Whoops, how'd that get in there? Okay, also I would just cut to the clips where an actual point is made, because if I include every speech of the AfD he puts in his video, I might just run out of Hitler clips to show, so yeah, I don't want that.
With the conservative CDU now in power, but effectively powerless because they're going to have to align with the SPD.
Conservative, good one, I might just steal it. Anyway, the reason I show this right here is because it shows the first sign of Pauli here not understanding the way we have democracy here in Germany. Yes, it is true that the CDU, I call them the CDU, have won most of the votes, and yes, they will very definitely be part of the government. But nothing of that is necessarily set in stone. having the most or second most votes is only really a kinda honorary title a party can give themselves, but it doesn't really matter in itself. I mean, it kinda does, but I'll explain. I mean, I know Paul lives in Britain and used to work with an American Rolex eater, so let me just explain to you, the audience, and Paul, how democracy with more than two parties work. So, after the election, each party gets a number of seats based on the percentage of votes they got in the election. And then they need to form coalitions with each other to make a government. However, the coalition forming is not something that is mandated. It is simply something that parties do to be able to govern, as in all the time that the government of Germany has existed, there was never a single party with over 50% of the vote. So basically all that matters is that the parties somehow get to form a government with over 50% of the vote, even if that government is theoretically made up from parties that aren't the biggest. I mean, in theory it is possible for there to be 10 parties in parliament, and the third, fourth and fifth party together have enough for 50%, but the first two parties don't. It probably won't ever happen, but it is possible, because all that matters is that the government has the majority to rule. This isn't very important right now, but it will be when we get to a later point in the part of the video, where it will become very obvious that Pauliline does have quite a big problem comprehending that democracy doesn't necessarily just have two parties that are bigger than the rest that decide everything.
The AfD, which thrived in opposition to Merkel, will build even more support as a result of being the only true opposition to the establishment.
Just to mention it here, call it foreshadowing if you will, the AfD wants to cut taxes for the rich, deport masses of innocent people, and align themselves with Russia. If you want to call that the only party against the government, you are welcome to do so. However, I don't know how nice that makes the party look itself.
German Zoomers, a plurality of whom voted for the far-left Die Linke party, and this tells you all you need to know about the Die Linke party.
Now, I try to go through life without judging people simply based on their looks, because I think it is only the bare fucking minimum to know that only because you think someone is ugly or something just because they look unconventional, you have in no way made a point that would discredit anything that a person stands for. In fact, you have made no point at all. However, I now feel justified to operate on the same level as these people when talking about them. So, frankly, I think someone with an anime profile picture and someone who looks like they still need their mother to fold their polo shirts for them have no fucking place to judge anyone's politics based on how they look. Also, while I'm down here in the mud with these canheads, this is the current leader of Die Linke in the parliament, and when looking at this very conventionally good-looking person, I think both of you should be ashamed for daring to speak against her party. Because apparently, political worth is now decided by how someone looks. I guess. Okay. But I don't want to just end it there. Acting on the same level as these dweebs really probably hurt myself more than I probably will ever hurt these idiots. These are the people that Paul and the generic anime profile picture made fun of. There's nothing wrong or even weird really how these people look. They are both simply proud and brave enough to express their own identity with their looks, even if it may look a bit unconventional to some people. And even if there are people like Paul out there that probably want to see them dead for simply being themselves, they'd still do it. Paul couldn't do what these people do. That's why his only point against them is to try and make fun of them. Paul, you are pathetic.
He can't decide whether to have a hissy fit over the AfD's performance,
These are the anti-AfD protesters.
or celebrate the fact that AfD didn't win outright despite Elon Musk's support.
Elon Musk, fick dein Mars-Projekt. Scheiß kalt und Arsch weit weg. Hab Brandenburg entdeckt. Bianchi Bikes, Future Flex.
Yay, our economy is collapsing, we can't afford to pay our heating bills, young women across the country are afraid of going outside, and we might all be sent off to die in Ukraine. But hey, at least the party that says mean things didn't win.
Wow, so, that there was a whole lot of bullcrap. Well, at least in the way he said it. Let's work through this. The economy is not collapsing, it would be more accurate to say that it's stagnating. However, it's technically still growing. But in all actuality, these stats don't really matter as much as some people like to pretend. Yes, there is certainly important information that can be found in a nation's GDP, but that's often not necessarily what people mean when they are talking about the economy. People more often than not are actually thinking about the prices of groceries, rent prices, and general cost of living, the amount of joblessness, or what we in Germany call the Rente, which is basically just a pension of social security. I don't know the exact translation, so to explain shortly, Rente is what you get when you worked your life and paid taxes your life, and now you're too old to work, so you get money from the government so you can still live. I think the word is pension, but I'm not so sure. Anyway, because I have neither the expertise nor the time commitment to go over each of these issues, I will refrain from making too many statements and will rather show how the AfD, Paul-Lee's favorite party as it seems, would not fix these issues. First, unemployment. The AfD simply wants to take away basically any social security. Because I guess if you're unemployed, you can go sleep under a bridge. Now, what would actually help fix unemployment would be able to work towards better working conditions. It's not like we don't have any jobs in Germany, right? Like, there's always something that needs to be done. But a lot of jobs have, for example, bad pay, bad hours, and in addition to that, often a bad reputation. I mean, we need people cleaning our streets, refilling the shelves of stores, cut your hair, work at a cash register, bake the bread, and so on. Sure, you could say that a lot of these jobs aren't very hard to do, so they're often called unskilled labor. And I am just assuming here that based on Paul's fanboying for the AfD, he probably thinks the same. But just to shortly address that, I don't see you restocking shelves, Paul. Where are you cleaning the streets of the city every day, Paul? Do you ring up all the customers that don't want to use the self-checkout counter, Paul? I thought not. And I know there are tech bros out there that would scream at this how a robot could do all these things better than a human. And to that I say, how about we start talking about it when these robots are actually here? Because when I go into a supermarket today, I mostly still see humans doing the work. So shut up. To get back to the original point, higher wages, or for example a 4-day work week, have shown to be successful strategies in what they do. And just think about it. More people that work, that make more money that they can spend in the more free time they have, how exactly could that not be good for the economy? To shortly address the rest, rent prices are going up because big companies buy all the available living spaces and then rent them out at a very high price, and not enough houses are getting built in general. I mean, that topic is also a lot more convoluted, but these are two very big reasons. The AfD's response to those problems is saying they want to cut social security in that aspect as well as wanting to remove what they call overregulation. What I mean is they want to get rid of fire prevention regulation, as well as some other stuff. Basically, if you are poor, you get to live in a big concrete cube that could just burst in flames every second. Though if you are poor, you probably could even afford that, as the AfD also wants to get rid of any regulation considering the pricing of houses and apartments. Also, they want to get rid of social housing and they want to sell every government-owned residence or apartment building to private companies. Because the past has showed when giving big corporations power over every piece of life, that is a great idea! Get ready for a world where poor people still live under bridges, middle-class people get to live in flammable concrete bricks, and the high society can live the lifestyle they frankly deserve. I mean, they have more money than you, they definitely worked harder than you, and thus deserve to enjoy life. And if you don't believe me, the AfD also wants to cut taxes for the rich. Who would have thought? So yeah, the AfD wants to basically have unregulated everything. Oh yeah, also basically all their points on the economy somewhere lead to migrants bad. I mean, without migrants our population would be shrinking, and also migrants are ready and willing to do the work that people like Paul probably think they are too good for. But let's just throw them all out. Sure, for the sake of bloodlines or something. I hope Paul is ready to work very, very low-paid jobs to make up for the missing people. Fuck's sake.
Yay, our economy is collapsing, we can't afford to pay our heating bills, young women across the country are afraid of going outside, and we might all be sent off to die in Ukraine. But hey, at least the party that says mean things didn't win.
I kinda babbled on about the economy a bit there, but there are other stupid things Paul said here. First, the rising heating bill is thanks to the war in Ukraine, as Germany doesn't necessarily want to get their oil from a country that has wet dreams about invading Europe. And while yes, it was definitely a massive mistake to get so dependent on Russian oil and gas, shame on you, Gerhard Schröder, currently heating prices are stagnating again. Yes, it is still an ongoing problem and far from being fixed, but if your answer is to again be dependent on a country that would like to invade your own, maybe you need to start to rethink what you want your passport to say. Moving on from that, Paul says that women are afraid to go out at night.
Young women across the country are afraid of going outside. In many towns and cities, women don't feel safe walking around alone.
Paul, if you have ever talked to a woman, best case scenario, maybe even more than one, you should know that a lot of women are afraid to go out at night because of men. Paul wants to imply this is the case because of dangerous immigrants. But Paul, all men are the problem. A lot of women are afraid at night because there's a whole lot of men out there that kill women. Have you heard of rape statistics, Paul? Have you ever heard the term femicide, Paul? Because a whole lot of women get killed by their male boyfriends, Paul. And before any idiot that was on Reddit for a day starts to annoy me, yes, of course it's also equally as bad when something like this happens to a man. There's no question about that. But statistically, it happens a lot more to women. I mean, this is the whole thing that the man versus bear thing was started over. To recap, because this is a topic that just personally annoyed me on the internet and I want to talk about it. If you don't like it, then screw you. The man versus bear debate was about the fact that when asked if women would prefer to meet a bear or a man in the forest at night, a lot said they would rather meet a bear. And a lot of people like Paul, and I'm just assuming here Paul probably thinks the same, got really defensive as a reaction to that, saying how stupid women were, that they would rather meet a bear, or how that they as a man would never hurt a woman and stuff. And to that, first of all, congratulations, you managed to do the absolute minimum and not rape or kill someone. And second, maybe you could ask why a lot of women would even say they would rather meet a bear at night over a man. Because believe it or not every woman that said bear is a man-hating online Marxist I keep hearing about. Most of those women that answered that probably had or have boyfriends or male friends or something. Because it's not about good individuals. It's about the fact that as a group of people, women have a statistically justified fear of meeting another person of a different, more privileged group, men, alone in a forest. And if you weren't stupid, Paul, you could see that maybe there's more to this than man-hating feminists. Okay, I got off track here, but that's just something that I saw on the internet that was bugging me. I don't even know if Paul thinks that, but, I'm just assuming it. And if he's not, someone provide me a link where Paul just agrees with everything I said about the man versus bear thing, okay? Then I will take everything back and delete this video. Okay, where were we?
And we might all be sent off to die in Ukraine. But hey, at least the party that says mean things didn't win.
Something stupid. Okay, so no one wants to send Germans to Ukraine. I don't know where he got that from. And also, the AfD is not just a party saying mean things, it's actually a party of fascists that wants to do fascist things, which, historically speaking, is looked down upon for good reasons. Okay, I have now talked a lot about this very short segment of Paul Align's video, but I think that this was quite important to do, because a lot of far-right people like to just throw out bullet points and pretend that it's just common knowledge that whatever they say is true. So even though whatever I said will definitely not change Paul's mind, it's important to show that he himself is just full of shit, basically. So that whoever comes across him knows how to make him look bad. And who would want to follow the same beliefs as someone who looks bad on the internet? Basically, I am telling you to slander him. But instead of throwing lies around, we should all expose his, so that people see him, and others like him, for the, frankly, pathetic little gremlins they are. Anyway, I still got some video to cover, so let's go on. Oh.
German boomers solidly rejecting any immigration reform while their kids and grandkids are getting absolutely BTFO'd by migrants just goes to show how incredibly sadistic they are as a generation. Western Civ is just a boomer life support system at this point. Everything is calibrated towards ensuring the boomers are comfortable as they begin to shuffle off the mortal coil. It doesn't matter how terrible the conditions are which facilitate this, promises were made.
Ah, the purest form of journalism, showing a bunch of tweets that make unfounded and, well, wrong statements. Look, there's even washed-up YouTuber Carl Benjamin from Sagen of a Card here. But just to go over the two tweets here that Paulchen put in, because it would be too hard to actually come up with his own things to say, this is wrong. First off, the CDU actually pushed for a very right-wing immigration reform, for which, and now get this, they actually tried to work together with the AfD. Though, it luckily ended up going nowhere. So, my point is that you actually should like the CDU or German boomers for kinda wanting the same thing that you also want. So maybe for you it's not the cuck-servatives, maybe for you it's the based-servatives. I don't know, it seems like a word that Paul would use. I mean, the presumption that Germany is getting BTFO'd by migrants is also just wrong. First off, general crime statistics show that crime is not soaring, like Paul said, and also this slight increase in crime is not due to migrants, but we'll get to that when we get to it. There was a dip right here, but that was because of the pandemic, you know, when everyone had to stay inside, and when everyone is inside, it's kinda the effect that less people are walking around that could commit a crime or be the victim of one. Anyway, after that you can see that there's no real spike in any crime whatsoever. It just went back to pre-COVID levels. But hey, maybe that's just an illusion. Maybe crime actually went down, but it looks like it's been the same because immigrants are just committing the exact perfect amount of crime to counteract the actual lower crime rate, which seems like incredible mental gymnastics and also just very unlikely, but sure, let's go with that. Well, if you also do just a small bit of research, you will find that, you are wrong with that assumption. Look, there was a recent study done by the IFO Institute, a leading research institute in Germany, which found that while yes, migrants are somewhat overrepresented by the crime statistics, this is not due to them being innate criminals or something stupid like that. It's actually just good old class inequality doing its thing and having poor people be more prone to being criminals. The study showed that migrants are somewhat overrepresented by the crime rate because they live in more criminal areas. Parts of cities that are poorer are cheaper, so if you don't have a lot of money, for example because you just came to a new country, you will probably move there. But a cheap area also means that more poorer people move there, and poorer people are more prone to committing crime. And before any toilet head comes along and wants to tell me that we should kill all poor people or something, poor people commit on average more crime because crime for them is a way of survival. Poor people are not genetically or whatever stupid shit evolutionary more prone to crime, which I know there are idiots out there that believe that. It's a way of survival for them. Poor people commit more crimes because they probably don't see or maybe even don't have a lot of ways and are ways out. And in worst cases, they're also more uneducated, so they are also less likely to be able to get a job or something. So this is not a video about that. My point is simply that if you want to debate whether or not poorness leads to crime, there's studies on that. Don't debate that with me. Find someone else stupid enough to debate with you on that, okay? Don't bother me. God damn it. Anyway, apart from showing that migrants commit the same amount of crimes as Germans in the same class, the study also showed that in general, independent from nationality or ethnicity, young men commit the most crimes. So, basically, I guess we should just deport every young man from the country, at least if we follow your logic, Paul. Anyway, for the rest of this tweet, it's just weird lies. Look, I was never in a nursing home, but I also never heard of a nursing home with an infinity pool. Or Filipino orderlies? I don't even know what that means. What? Also, Sargon is, well, expectedly just being stupid here, as always, as actually under the CDU, the pensions for old people went down, and we are currently having the so-called Rentenkrise, which means pension crisis. And no, it's not because of immigrants or so whatever, it's because we don't have enough young people, or in general just not enough taxes to pay for pensions, and there's this whole thing about the general generational contract, and look, my point here is that they're talking shit, but they pretend to be academics. Which they aren't. They're washed up Twitter users.
The flip side being, of course, and I'm not trying to be morose here, it's a statistical fact, boomers make up a huge contingent of the country's voting bloc, but many of them won't be around for future elections. While the AFD's youth vote is almost double that of the establishment parties, there's plenty of white pills here.
But if you see here, the left is even more liked by the youth, so, haha, I win, my view got more young people. You're not enough, soy boy.
But that's not the only story. Last month, the future of energy production around the world experienced a significant shift, when Trump's declaration of a national energy emergency was designed to expedite approvals for energy infrastructure, including nuclear power.
Okay, this next part is just an ad, but it's just as funny, because Paul is advertising for nuclear energy, and while he does so, he mentions how important Canada's reserves are, as well as just how it's important for the US and Canada to work together.
The uranium market is facing a severe supply shortage, with demand vastly outpacing production, and the US relies heavily on foreign uranium, which is geopolitically risky, increasing the need for domestic and allied sources like Canada.
And it's just funny to me how Paul's favorite president is currently doing everything in his power to make Canada hate the US. What a great person you are supporting, my dear Mr. Paulie Jonas water daughter.
Now for the bad news, and come on, let's be honest. Germany's experiencing almost weekly terror attacks. The crime rate is soaring.
You know, this is really easy to debunk as well if you just Google once. Here you can see the crime statistics I showed earlier, and just like a few minutes ago, when I first showed this, the crime rate still hasn't gone up significantly. And yes, for the past few weeks it would seem like crime is skyrocketing in Germany, because there have been a lot of cases on the news. But do you know what news are? They are also corporations, and they want to make money. And you know what sells really, really well? Especially when an election is coming up? Fear, drama, panic even. These are highly polarized topics, and of course newspapers know that during an election cycle, these things are of special interest to a lot of people, because a lot of people orient their political position and who they vote for around their own perceived perspective of safety. Apart from that, an election cycle is also a highly polarized time period, so a person that plans on sending some message through the means of murdering someone, as a political move basically, they would be incentivized to do this during the election cycle. Then again, it could have also just been coincidence, or there haven't really been a lot at all, and it just seemed like that. I haven't really looked into every single crime that took place in the last few weeks, and something tells me that our dear Paulie here also didn't. I mean, it doesn't really matter. Paul doesn't care about the truth. He just wants to turn every point to say non-white people bad. That's it. Well, maybe Jews also suck, but that's just, I don't know, but I think it depends on what Paul's mood is today.
German election result map is basically the German migrant population map.
I mean, this here just kind of hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? This is some fringe attempt to paint this election as tainted by migrants. But first, the CDU is not a pro-immigration party, and second, this split between East and West is most likely due to the historical East and West split of Germany, if you ever heard of that. I don't have the expertise nor the time to go very deep into the topic, but basically, after the reunification of Germany, the East was pretty underdeveloped in comparison to the West. And while there has been a lot of work done to fix that inequality, a lot still remains. The East remains to be a lot poorer than the West, and a lot of people in the East also feel betrayed by the West, and thus the after can do what they do best. Simplify complex problems and social structures into one-sentence problems that apparently all are caused by a minority that itself is suffering under these issues. So a lot of people in the East just feel like they've been left behind by the West, turn to them. After all, simple solutions to complex problems have always been the MO of the political right.
Turns out diversity is actually a strength, if you're part of the political class who imported them all and can get them to vote against the interests of German natives.
That's not how voting works, Paul. If they have a German citizenship, they are German, Paul. That's when they get to vote. Paul? Does he think someone's right to vote come from their ethnicity? Do people need to have German blood in their veins or what? Paul, what are you saying? That's not how democracy has ever worked anywhere! Paul, you pretend to be a fucking journalist! At least the basics of democracy are something you should know! Unless Paul disagrees with those basics, in that case I think you might be needing this. Also, I feel pretty certain I have already showed how the AfD would only ruin Germany as well as our economy. If you need any further proof, talk to any economist in existence. Thanks.
The conservative CDU has vowed to exclude the AfD from any coalition government. In the name of democracy, of course, because you can't allow the people who voted for a party that got the second highest number of democratic votes in a democratic election to enjoy, God forbid, democratic representation.
Paul, they still have seats in parliament. They are represented just like any other party. What? They deserve special treatment because you like them and they got the silver medal? Paul, if you are so invested in the representation of the people that voted for a party with the second best result in an election, where do you stand on supporting Democrats in the US exactly? Cause, well, they got a lot more than 20%, but I don't see you crying for them. If you remember early in this video, I explained the German democratic system, and here you can see why I did that. Paul wants to portray the German system and every party apart from the AfD as undemocratic, because obviously he doesn't actually care about democracy or the actual will of the people, otherwise he would stop whining that the AfD deserves more representation. Because frankly, they don't. Even if you like the AfD, 80% of people voted against them. And I am specifically saying against, and not something like 80% voted differently, because most Germans do not like the AfD. Look at the mass protests we had in Germany against the AfD. If an equal amount of people were for the AfD, or at least not actively against them, these protests would have been a lot smaller, and there would have been pro-AfD protests that were in any way significant. But there weren't. And these aren't small protests. The German people voted against the AfD. Because it doesn't matter if you're conservative or progressive, any person that actually has any affection for democracy at all will have voted against the AfD. And Paul has a kinda hard time accepting that.
Ich werde mit allen in Frage kommenden politischen Parteien der demokratischen Mitte unseres Landes sprechen.
Over 10 million votes, a 21% vote share, 151 seats in parliament, yet he's got the nerve to assert that they're not part of the democratic centre. Centre-right people taking the side of the commies for the 890th time.
While I don't like the CDU, and frankly I don't consider them to be the political center as well, you are just talking out of your British tea-infested little arse right now, Paulchen. If the Greens, or God forbid the Left Party, got 20% of the vote, you know damn well Paul wouldn't call them the democratic center. No, those commie bosses deserve to burn, but how dare you call my favorite party of racist not the political center? Paul, just because you cry about something does not mean you have to get it your way. Also, I just want to point out that in a soy-filled baby tantrum, in which he whines that the CDU isn't doing a coalition with the party he wants, he feels the need to use a tweet by Kaguya's top gal to underscore his opinion. This is journalism. Yeet!
Yes, the two parties that emerged as the biggest losers on the night, the SPD and the Greens, will likely stay in government, while the party that got more votes than both of them has absolutely no chance of entering government. Gotta love European democracy.
First, the Greens probably aren't going to be part of the government, and second, I want to point out yet again that Paul's only problem with the German democratic system is that the party he likes doesn't get to be part of the government. Paul, the SPD and CDU together got over 50% of the seats in parliament. What are you on about? If it were a system like the US or Britain, only the CDU would have won, because the winner takes it all, am I right? Without wanting to glaze our democratic system too much, because it definitely got many faults, it's still much more democratic than what either you Brits or the US got going on. So how about you stop whining and start accepting results of an election, you snowflake? Now, to conclude, Paul is an idiot. All he's done is whine that his favorite party doesn't get to rule, even though 80% of people didn't vote for them. And also to pin all the problems we have here in Germany, real ones and ones that he made up, on migrants. Paul obviously doesn't care for Germans or what they actually vote for, frankly. Paul is a racist shill that only cares about resegregating the world, again, between those he considers to be native and probably white Westerners and everybody else. And he wants to make you think that that view that he and the AfD share is a good one. He wants to make his viewers think that this is a patriotic, and in this case German, view to hold. A big thing that the AfD and far-righters in Germany like to quote, and apparently also Paul's comment section, is Germany for the Germans. Or Deutschland in Deutschen. And some people like to add Ausländer raus, which means out with the foreigners. And you know what? I personally think it's obvious how racist that is to say. But of course, as we already know, I'm a cultural Marxist, Stalinist, propagandist, something, woke. So we need something to judge this view that Paul shares on a more patriotic level as well, because I think even from a patriotic German view, what they say is wrong and bad. But how do we judge it? What can we use as a measurement for it? Well, let's take a look at the German national anthem. The first line says, Einigkeit und Recht und Freiheit für das deutsche Vaterland, which translated means unity, freedom and justice for the German fatherland. And before any right-wingers get all high and mighty and say, ha, look, he said fatherland, and that's a right-winger thing to say. Fatherland just means Germany. The German fatherland is Germany. It just means the home of the Germans. Everyone who calls Germany their home. That's the German fatherland. That's it, okay? Also, hi, this is me. I'm not a cartoon. This is me in real life. I'm not 2D. And I hope you enjoyed the crusty quality of my camera from 2020. Haha! Now, to get back to my original point, the AfD wants none of this. They want to split the German population along ethnicical or skin color or cultural lines. They want to get rid of real justice and simply pin everything on foreigners and just deport them all. And they want to get rid of all the personal freedoms that we have worked so hard for, like expressing yourself or living in a way that you are happiest with, because they want you to live in a way that they consider German. And if you don't live German enough, well, I guess you shouldn't live like that. They are the most un-German party that ever existed, apart from the first ever un-German party ever existed, the NSDAP, but that's a different topic. Every single one of their values, everything they fight for, fights against and stands against the basic values of Germany. Values so basic to German culture that they are literally in the German national anthem. It doesn't get more basic than that. And you know what? I don't want to just call them German values, because frankly, justice, freedom, and unity are human values. And basically what I'm saying, people that are in the AfD, or if you support the AfD, you are not only standing against Germany, you're standing against humanity. Basically, you're traitors to your own species. Traitors, if you're in Germany, traitors to Germany. But we don't deport you, we don't kill you, we don't even threaten or think about that. because we still see you as humans, humans that deserve basic respect. Because we actually have values we believe in, values that are not hate-driven. And I think that's a great thing, and I want you to think the same way we do in that aspect. I don't want to force you to stop being conservative or anything, but I want people to at least have the common fucking decency to believe that humans deserve respect for each other. The basic respect of not being treated like garbage or as pests. And I think that would be very simple. And frankly, if you disagree with me on that and are German, I'm sorry, man, but the national anthem is on my side. It doesn't get more German than that. Try finding any piece of poetry that's more German and on your side. God damn it, I'm arguing like a true debate, bro, aren't I? But to end on a high note, I don't want to end this while making some big speech about yelling at Nazis or whatever. I think it is more helpful to end it on a high note for those that believe in the same things that I think is just normal. To end on a high note for the people that believe in good values, human values. So I want to give you some hope. If you live in Germany or if you see the global push to the right, I want to give you hope. I want to show you a small clip that recently got recommended to me from a German football game where a German interrupted a minute of silence by saying something mean. And, well, I'm going to let this clip speak for itself. But just before that, I'm just going to thank you for watching. And, just going to end it here, basically, just so the clip afterwards to give some hope. But otherwise, I hope you had a great time watching. I hope you took something out of it. I hope you enjoyed my beautiful face. Anyway, I hope you had fun. And please, let's not repeat a 1933. Please. Oh my god, I just noticed in all those clips I recorded, I was sitting slumped. God damn it, everyone's gonna think I'm short.